The 2010 UK general election was an important one for many reasons. It was the end of 13 years of Labour rule in Westminster and the beginning of 14 years of Conservative rule. It was the first election where the minimum age to stand as an MP was lowered from 21 to 18, and it was also the first UK election that had live television debates. It was also the first general election that would result in a coalition government, and it was the first coalition government since World War II. This election would also be the first general election that any of the three major party leaders would contest. But to know more about this election, we have to get into some context. Hey everybody, it's Prometheus TV, and welcome to another election video. This time we'll be going over a British election. We'll be going over the 2010 UK election. I decided to do a video on this election because I thought it had some pretty interesting circumstances surrounding it, as I mentioned at the start of the video. So yeah, on to the actual video. Going into this election, the Labour Party had been in power for 13 years and had won the previous three general elections. In 1997, the Conservatives had one of their worst defeats ever, finishing with only 165 seats in the House of Commons. Following this horrendous result, the Conservatives had a string of leaders who all failed to get into power. Their next election in 2001 wasn't much better, as they gained only one seat, and in 2005 they managed to gain 33 seats, but the Labour Party still had a 66-seat majority in the House of Commons. It was time for a change for the Conservatives. After the 2005 election defeat, Conservative leader Michael Howard resigned and triggered a new leadership election. The frontrunners in the leadership race was MP from Witney, David Cameron, and MP from Halton Price and Howden, David Davis. So basically it was just the Battle of the Davids. Cameron was a unique candidate as he had only been an MP for 4 years, and he was very young at 39 years old. He was also on the more moderate wing of the Conservative Party. Davis had been in Parliament for 18 years up to that point, and was a cabinet minister in previous Conservative governments, as well as being the party chairman for a year. Cameron spoke at length about modernizing the party and moving them to the center. Immediately, there were some comparisons to then Prime Minister Tony Blair, as he emphasized modernizing the Labour Party when he first campaigned for an election back in 1997. Cameron ended up winning the leadership election with 67.6% of the Conservative members' votes. David Cameron, after just 4 years in Parliament, was the Conservative leader and the leader of the opposition. Now on to the Labour Party. Going into 2010, the Labour Party had been in charge for 13 years, which is their longest time in power in their history. Before 2005, they had not won 3 general elections in a row. They were swept into power in a landslide in the 1997 election, winning 418 seats under the charismatic leadership of Tony Blair. Tony Blair would serve as Prime Minister for 10 years before stepping aside for his Chancellor of the Exchequer and friend, Gordon Brown. Blair and Brown were friends from when they entered Parliament back in 1983. They even shared an office together, and they soon rose to prominence in the party, and after the leader at the time, John Smith, died of a heart attack, Gordon Brown was seen as his successor. But many in the party saw Blair as the better figure to be leader of the Labour Party, so Brown stepped aside and allowed Blair to win the leadership. They both agreed, though, that after 2 elections, Brown would take over as leader. While Blair was Prime Minister, Brown was his Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is what they call the Finance Minister in Britain. Except Blair didn't really hold up his end of the bargain, and he actually fought 3 general elections, and of course he won all of them. But Blair eventually did step down in 2007, and Brown was elected Labour leader unopposed, and being Labour leader meant that he was the Prime Minister now. There was talk of an election being called that year, but as the Conservatives were catching up in the polls after the 2007 Conservative Party conference, Brown decided against an election, and because of that, he was actually called by a lot of people to be a bottler, and that's why you see the image on screen right now.
Election. We will fight. Britain will win.
Just over a week ago, one poll gave Labour an 11-point lead over the Conservatives. A day after David Cameron's speech, the gap had narrowed sharply, and one organisation had the main parties level pegging.
Brown would regret that decision not to call an election because soon he would have to deal with the global recession, which had started in the US in 2008 and it spread to the rest of the world, which obviously included Britain. The Brown government took action by introducing a £500 billion bank rescue package and worked with other countries to help bail out the world banks. Brown was praised for this action, but the economy didn't get much better, which led to Labour falling in the polls going into the 2010 general election. Now we move on to the third largest party in the UK, the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats had been steadily gaining seats since the 1997 election, and in the 2005 election, the Liberal Democrats actually had their best ever result up to that point. They won 62 seats and got 22% of the vote, which is their most amount of seats since they became the Liberal Democrats. Their surge was partly due to the unpopularity of the Iraq War, which both Labour and the Conservatives supported. Despite this success, though, there were doubts in the party about their leader, Charles Kennedy, especially after the election of David Cameron as the Conservative leader. Many in the party thought that despite receiving their best number of seats ever, they should have done better against weak Conservative opposition. It also came out that Kennedy had been receiving treatment for a drinking problem, which further damaged his standing. On January 7, 2006, Kennedy would resign as Liberal Democrat leader, and Menzies Campbell would be elected as his replacement. However, Campbell's leadership wouldn't last long, as there were questions about his age and his performances during Prime Minister's questions. So he resigned, and there would be another leadership election in 2007. The election would be between two MPs that were elected in 2005, and both were actually former members of the European Parliament, and their names were Nick Clegg and Chris Huhne. Clegg would win the leadership election with 50.6% of the vote and would be the Liberal Democrat leader going into the next election. This makes this election unique since it was the first time since 1979 that all of the major party leaders were fighting their very first general election. On April 6, 2010, Prime Minister Gordon Brown would head to Buckingham Palace to ask the Queen for permission to dissolve Parliament on April 12th and call an election. The election would be called for May 6, 2010, almost 5 years after the last general election. This election had a record number of MPs that decided not to seek re-election, with 149 MPs deciding not to stand in this election, which is even higher than the 1945 election, which was the first election after World War II. This was most likely due to the MP expenses scandal that had happened the year before the election, which actually had even members of Parliament that were actually barred from running for the election in the next election. This was also the first UK general election to have televised debates. The US started having them from 1960 and continuously since 1976. Canada first had them in 1979, but 2010 was the first time they actually came to the UK. There was a consideration to have them decades before, but nothing ever materialized until this election. There was a Conservative leadership debate in 2005 in which Cameron hinted at wanting to do a debate between all of the party's leaders in the next general election.
Can I just say before we start that I think it's great the BBC is hosting this debate, and I hope that it's the precursor of a debate between whichever one of us wins and the leader of the Labour Party, whoever that is, at the time of the next general election, live on British television. I think it'd be a great idea.
The first debate was on April 15th on ITV in Manchester. Nick Clegg was judged to have done the best during this debate. It helped that he was positioned on the side of both Cameron and Brown, making it seem like he was another option among the two parties squabbling. Clegg was praised for his debate performance, which led to a period known as Clegg Mania, when the Liberal Democrats received a surge in support after the first televised debates. In a couple of polls following the debate, the Liberal Democrats were actually leading in the polls. The second debate was on the 22nd in Bristol on Sky News. All of the leaders were judged to have improved in that debate, with Clegg and Cameron coming out at the top of the debate polls with Brown close behind. There were allegations of Clegg receiving secret donations from businessmen, but Clegg showed his financial records and they were proven false. The final debate was on the 29th on BBC in Birmingham, which Cameron was judged to have won. After the final debate, the Conservatives had a 5% lead over Labour in the polls. This campaign didn't really go well for Labour. They hadn't led in a poll since 2008, and Gordon Brown didn't do as well as the other leaders in the debates. And there was also an interesting development that happened during the campaign on April 28th, when Prime Minister Gordon Brown went to the marginal seat of Rochdale, which was a neck-and-neck constituency between the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats. While he was there, he was mic'd up by Sky News. Here's a video of that.
No, we've been trying to get people back quickly, but are they going to go to university? That's the plan.
I hope so. They're only 12 and 10.
Oh, they're only 12 and 10, but they're doing well at school.
Yeah, very good.
A good family.
Yeah,
good to see you.
And the education system in Rochdale, I will congratulate it.
Good. And it's very nice to see you. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thanks very much. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Look after you.
Good to see you all. Good to see you. Thanks very much. That was a disaster. Well, just... Okay. Should never have put me with that woman. Whose idea was that?
I don't know, I didn't see.
It was Sue, I think. They're just ridiculous.
I'm not sure they'll go with that one.
They will go with it.
What did she say?
Oh, everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman that said she used to be Labour. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't know why Sue pushed her up to work.
So basically what happened is he was mic'd up by the Sky News TV people that were supposed to be following him around, showing him campaigning. And since he was still mic'd up when he got into the car, he didn't realize that he was still mic'd up, and he actually said that. And, that was seen as a bit of an embarrassing moment. Here's a clip of him when he found out about it.
Tape, let's play it and see if we can hear it.
Should never have put me with that woman. Whose idea was that?
I don't know, I didn't see.
It was Sue, I think. They're just ridiculous.
I'm not sure they'll go with that one.
They will go with it.
What did she say?
Oh, everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman that said she used to be Labour. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
That is what you said. Is she not allowed to express her view to you?
Of course
or what?
she's allowed to express her view, and I was saying that. The problem was that I was dealing with a question that she raised about immigration, and I wasn't given a chance to answer it because we had a whole melee of press around her. But of course I apologise if I've said anything that has been offensive, and I would never put myself in a position where I would want to say anything like that about a woman I met. It was a question about immigration that really I think was annoying.
Brown later went back to Duffy's house in Rochdale and apologized to her personally.
I've been talking to Gillian. I'm mortified by what's happened. I've given her my sincere apologies. I misunderstood what she said, and she has accepted that there was a misunderstanding, and she's accepted my apology. If you like, I'm a penitent sinner. Sometimes you say things that you don't mean to say, sometimes you say things by mistake, and sometimes when you say things, you want to correct it very quickly. So I wanted to come here and say to Gillian, I was sorry, to say that I'd made a mistake, but to also say I understood the concerns that she was bringing to me, and I had simply misunderstood some of the words that she used.
The incident was dubbed Bigotgate by the media and was considered a bad moment in the Labour Party's campaign. It probably didn't affect the election result much since the Conservatives were ahead in the polls anyways, but it did do some damage to their credibility and to their campaign. Now let's look at the results of the election. The results was a hung parliament, which means no party got a clear majority in the parliament. The Conservatives had the largest number of seats with 306, which was 20 seats short of a majority in parliament. Labour won 258 seats, and the Liberal Democrats won 57 seats, as well as some smaller parties winning seats. Conservatives made a huge gain of 96 seats in this election, but it wasn't enough to form a majority government. The Labour Party had a very disappointing night, losing 90 seats, which was the most seats that they had ever lost since the 1931 general election. Liberal Democrats also had a disappointing night as they lost 5 seats in an election that they were expected to actually gain seats, although it was still their second highest number of seats ever. In terms of popular vote, the Conservatives received 36.1% of the vote, which was actually more than the Labour Party had in 2005. But in 2005, the Labour Party were able to get a sizable majority, while the Conservatives didn't even get a majority, despite having a higher percentage of the popular vote. The Labour Party's vote declined by 6.2%, only receiving 29% of the vote, which is their lowest popular vote percentage since they lost in a landslide in 1983. The Liberal Democrats actually increased their popular vote by 1%, receiving 23% of the vote, which was their highest total in an election ever, but unfortunately that translated to them losing 5 seats. The day after the election, there was still some uncertainty about who would form the next government. They were in a precarious situation, as this was the first time since 1974 that no party had a clear majority. The Conservatives had the highest number of seats, so they could have, in theory, formed a minority government, but there were talks between parties about forming possible coalitions due to the economic crisis going around the world and Britain not wanting to seem like they didn't have a stable government. So that's why there were talks of possible coalitions. The UK had coalition governments before during World War II and even before that, but this was a completely new situation since whoever would be forming the coalition would be forming it after the results of an election. There were talks with both parties about a possible coalition, and those talks went on for about 5 days. And there were talks of a Labour and Liberal Democrat coalition, but those two parties together wouldn't be able to form a majority, and those talks quickly collapsed, especially after Gordon Brown basically said that he wouldn't leave as Labour leader, or he would leave sometime in the next Parliament. There's actually a very good documentary called 5 Days That Changed Britain. It's an hour long. I'll link in the description, but it basically goes into very good detail, and it talks to a lot of the people involved about what happened, why Labour and the Liberal Democrats, why they didn't form a coalition, and why they eventually chose the Conservatives, which is what happens. But yeah, so there were talks of a Conservative and Liberal Democrat coalition, and Nick Clegg actually says that he thinks the party with the most seats should get to form the next government.
Clegg, are you going to do a deal with the Tories?
Whichever party gets the most votes and the most seats, if not an absolute majority, has the first right to seek to govern either on its own or by reaching out to other parties.
Finally, on May 11th, 5 days after the election, David Cameron announced that the Tories would form a coalition government with the Liberal Democrats.
But however much pride we can take in that enormous advance, we have to accept that we fell short of an overall majority. As I said last night, Britain needs strong, stable, decisive government, and it is in the national interest that we get that on a secure basis. We are at war in Afghanistan with our troops putting their lives at risk for us every day. We are facing a financial and economic situation of great seriousness as a result of our dangerous debts and our deficit. We need a government that reassures the international markets. We need policies that will bring economic recovery. And we need a government that understands that great change is needed in order to restore faith in our political system. Britain voted for change yesterday, but it also voted for a new politics. It did not vote for party political bickering, grandstanding, and point scoring. Our country's problems are too serious, they are too urgent for that. So we must all rise to this occasion. We must show leadership. We must sort things out as quickly as possible for the good of the country. Nick Clegg has said that because the Conservative Party won the most votes and the most seats in this election, we should have the chance to form a government. And I thank him for that. So we will now begin talks with other parties to see how that can be done.
If you want to see the full speech, I'll link it in the description. Afterwards, Gordon Brown tendered his resignation as Prime Minister to the Queen and asked her to call David Cameron to form a government.
As you know, the general election left no party able to command a majority in the House of Commons. I said I would do all that I could to ensure a strong, stable and principled government was formed, able to tackle Britain's economic and political challenges effectively. My constitutional duty is to make sure that a government can be formed following last Thursday's general election. I've informed the Queen's private secretary that it's my intention to tender my resignation to the Queen. In the event that the Queen accepts, I shall advise her to invite the Leader of the Opposition to seek to form a government. I wish the next Prime Minister well as he makes the important choices for the future. Only those who have held the office of Prime Minister can understand the full weight of its responsibilities and its great capacity for good. I have been privileged to learn much about the very best in human nature, and a fair amount too about its frailties, including my own. Above all, it was a privilege to serve, and yes, I loved the job, not for its prestige, its titles and its ceremony, which I do not love at all. No, I loved the job for its potential to make this country I love fairer, more tolerant, more green, more democratic, more prosperous and more just, truly a greater Britain. In the face of many challenges in a very few short years, challenges up to and including the global financial meltdown, I have always strived to serve, to do my best in the interests of Britain, its values and its people. And let me add one thing also. I will always admire the courage I have seen in our armed forces. And now that the political season is over, let me stress that having shaken their hands and looked into their eyes, our troops represent all that is best in our country, and I will never forget all those who have died in honour and whose families today live in grief. My resignation as leader of the Labour Party will take effect immediately, and in this hour I want to thank all my colleagues, ministers, members of Parliament, and I want to thank above all my staff who have been friends as well as brilliant servants of the country. Above all, I want to thank Sarah for her unwavering support as well as her love and for her own service to our country. I thank my sons, John and Fraser, for the love and joy they bring to our lives. And as I leave the second most important job I could ever hold, I cherish even more the first, as a husband and father. Thank you, and goodbye.
The day after he resigned, the coalition was formally agreed to. It was the first coalition government since World War II, and it was the first to be formed following an election. It was also the first time the Liberal Democrats had been in government in its current form, and it was also the first time that a Liberal Party had been in government since the 1920s. As for the Conservatives, it was their first election victory since 1992, and it would be the first time that they had been in government since 1997. As part of the agreement, David Cameron, as he was the leader of the Conservatives who had the most seats, would be Prime Minister, and Nick Clegg would be the Deputy Prime Minister.
Here he is, our new Prime Minister.
Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I have accepted. Before I talk about that new government, let me say something about the one that has just passed. Compared with a decade ago, this country is more open at home and more compassionate abroad, and that is something we should all be grateful for. And on behalf of the whole country, I'd like to pay tribute to the outgoing Prime Minister for his long record of dedicated public service. In terms of the future, our country has a hung parliament where no party has an overall majority, and we have some deep and pressing problems, a huge deficit, deep social problems, and a political system in need of reform. For those reasons, I aim to form a proper and full coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. I believe that is the right way to provide this country with the strong, the stable, the good and decent government that I think we need so badly. Nick Clegg and I are both political leaders who want to put aside party differences and work hard for the common good and for the national interest. I believe that is the best way to get the strong government that we need, decisive government that we need today. I came into politics because I love this country. I think its best days still lie ahead, and I believe deeply in public service. And I think the service our country needs right now is to face up to our really big challenges, to confront our problems, to take difficult decisions, to lead people through those difficult decisions so that together we can reach better times ahead. One of the tasks that we clearly have is to rebuild trust in our political system. Yes, that's about cleaning up expenses. Yes, that's about reforming Parliament. And yes, it's about making sure people are in control and that the politicians are always their servants and never their masters. But I believe it's also something else. It's about being honest about what government can achieve. Real change is not what government can do on its own. Real change is when everyone pulls together, comes together, works together, when we all exercise our responsibilities to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, and to others. And I want to help try and build a more responsible society here in Britain. One where we don't just ask, what are my entitlements, but what are my responsibilities? One we don't ask what am I just owed, but more, what can I give? And a guide for that society that those who can should, and those who can't, we will always help. I want to make sure that my government always looks after the elderly, the frail, the poorest in our country. We must take everyone through us on some of the difficult decisions that we have ahead. Above all, it will be a government that is built on some clear values. Values of freedom, values of fairness, and values of responsibility. I want us to build an economy that rewards work. I want us to build a society with stronger families and stronger communities. And I want a political system that people can trust and look up to once again. This is going to be hard and difficult work. A coalition will throw up all sorts of challenges, but I believe together we can provide that strong and stable government that our country needs, based on those values, rebuilding family, rebuilding community, above all, rebuilding responsibility in our country. Those are the things I care about. Those are the things that this government will now start work on doing. Thank you very much.
This coalition government would last until the next general election in 2015, when the Conservatives managed to win an outright majority, and they would be in power for another 9 years, while the Liberal Democrats in that election were almost wiped out. That's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for watching, and let me know what other videos I should do in the future. I will see you guys later. Take care.